Hi, Stefan Swartling here from Swartling Network. One of the reasons why there is so many Android phones sold is because of the cheap segment. Android has quite large market shares in countries like India and China, for example. So what would happen if Apple released a cheaper version of the iPhone? Well, it wouldn't do much for Apple's profit, but it would be a huge impact on Android. If Apple did a good enough iPhone, but much cheaper in the same class as, for example, Google's Nexus devices, with hardly no profit or margins, then Apple would take a lot of market shares in the same countries, India and China. But what would Apple earn by doing that? Well, the same thing as Google earns by releasing cheap Nexus phones, for example. Apple could build up an even larger user base with loyal users, and it would generate profits from the App Store because all these new users would buy apps from the App Store. They would be new iCloud users. And we probably would see a lot of new developers too, so that would be awesome for Apple. But Apple don't do cheap. It's against their image or their user base and so on. They do quality, so they have to do a really good phone and release it very cheap to be able to do this. So personally, I have a very hard time seeing Apple releasing a cheaper iPhone. And it would be bad for example, fragmentation. Apple would have different kinds of specs on different kinds of phones, so maybe the latest iOS version couldn't run on these cheaper iPhones and so on. And also the developers would get a lot of problems because all these new advanced apps that are developed for iOS wouldn't work on these cheap phones or work really bad, and that's against what Apple stands for. Apple would never do something that could ruin the excellent user experience on Apple devices. Never. But what about the iPhone 5C then? It was never meant to be a cheap phone. It was meant to replace the iPhone 5 with the iPhone 5C. So it should never be cheap. But what will happen now? Will Apple scratch the C version of the iPhone, or will we see an iPhone 6C? I don't know. Or could Apple replace the C version of the iPhone with a cheaper model, a cheaper iPhone? Who knows? It would be really cool, but we will see what Apple will do really soon. But we haven't seen any leaks about a new C iPhone or a cheaper iPhone, so maybe not. So that was my thoughts about a cheaper iPhone, a potential cheaper iPhone. Please like this video. Okay, bye.